Katie was born back in February. The pregnancy was very, very difficult. I was incredibly sick, and the truth is I felt like I was dying. And so I had made preparations just in case that happened, had written a letter to each of the children, and did my final things that I needed to have done so my husband didn't have to make those decisions for me. She was not supposed to be born until my granddad's birthday at the end of March, but she came early, and when she was born, I was hemorrhaging, and she was tangled up in that. It wasn't good. It was a very sketchy situation, an emergency C-section, and on the worst snowstorm we'd had that year, no snow was plowed. It was terrible just to get to the hospital, and I had to tell the doctors if they had to make a choice, they were to choose her, because I'd had 33 years at that point that were good, and I wanted them to choose to save her. I didn't expect to come out of it because I was so sick, and the next day I woke up and they told me that she was with us, and after another 12 hours, they let me go in and meet her. She'd stabilized once I got in there with her, but not enough that they felt comfortable, so they shipped her up to Utah Valley Hospital. She was pretty fragile at the time, and by the time I could get shipped up, a nurse had made these little casts of her hands. And, sorry, it's a little emotional for me, but we were so grateful that she did, because we knew that that might be the only tangible thing that we got to have of her. And she did 2 casts because she was balling her fist so tight. It's the same hand anyway, but she was balling her fist so tight they could barely get it out of there. And she wanted to make sure that Dad and I each had one. Anyway, she stayed there for 2 weeks, and they did the best that they could, but they realized that she was out of their scope. She's just a heavy hitter. And then they sent her up to Primary Children's, where she lived for another 6 weeks. After she was at Primary Children's for 6 weeks, she got to come home, but then we had to drive up there again 3 times a week. Before we left there, we had a meeting, not a Zoom meeting at that time, can't remember what they called it, but with Southeast Early Intervention team. And I was kind of excited and shocked and nervous about who these people were. They gave us a lot of information, but just knowing that I was going to go home and have Dr. Madsen and the early intervention team, I was going to have people to catch me, was amazing, because she came home on feeding tubes. We came home with a NICU. She had a heart monitor, feeding tubes, oxygen, CPAPs. I had to do the feeding tubes myself, which I'm not that person. I'm that person now, but and anyway, having the occupational therapist, physical therapist, the nursing team, the early childhood specialists come in, understand, be so kind, and show us what to do to help her was a godsend. I don't know. I know I couldn't have done it without them. So she says that there are some girls that she remembers. The main one, she doesn't have the names of the people, but Lois, she's now mostly retired, but Lois was amazing. And do you remember? Yeah, so she says that they would come to the house, and they'd come for about an hour, and they'd sit down, look around, and try to find how to help us with items that we already had in the home, and showed us how to use those to help her learn to walk and eat. Yeah, and we had one gal that tried to help me learn sign language. For the walking, she remembered that they would be looking around and questioning Mom. and also what she can eat, why, and that she was little and she would pull up on things and try to grab things. So one of the things that she found, they had brought in an item because they brought a walker because our walker kept tipping and it would smash her fingers. So they brought in a walker and some of those weights that you would use for kids that have sensory, that need the weight, but we put those on the walker so it wouldn't tip and smash her fingers. And once she understood what they were trying to help her do, she grabbed a tote, but very specifically a clear tote at the house, and tipped it over, put all of her toys out of it, and used that to stabilize and push around, because she told us that it helped because it was big and wide, but she liked that she could see through it to navigate around. And then when it came to the food, do you remember the Chester Cheetah Puffs? Okay, she grabbed them from her brother and ate them, and we were scared because she didn't have a palate, and so to that time she had to eat very specific. And anyway, but she grabbed that and it dissolved so fast that I think Lois was there at the time from early intervention, and she's like, this is wonderful, it dissolves so fast, it gets her practice using the tongue to maneuver the food back. And so we used those Chester Cheetah, the puffs, popcorn. You like to eat that, and it helped you learn how to swallow the food. Yeah. Scared mom though. They brought in a plastic sack, and gave it to a baby. I'm like, we don't do that. And they said, no, we do, because of the sensory. Of course, you watch them really close, but I have 4 other children, never a plastic sack. They also, anyway, the sensory of it, and they'd put things in it, and she'd have to practice getting into it and pulling things out. Anyway, so that was cool to watch, but it just blew my mind that they would, a plastic sack. And just watching the things that they would make out of items around the house, like the milk lids, and you could divide them by colors and have her sort the colors and put them into objects, or even turn them upside down and pick up pom-poms and put them into it, just things that we had. And so that was really nice, because I thought I'm going to have to go spend money I don't have on therapy toys, and it turned out we did not have to do that. Yeah, she says, I don't know. Mom would be questioning and questioning and looking and looking. We didn't get the diagnosis of the deafness until just before we left the hospital the first time. So we're about 8 weeks in. And again, we live very rural, and coal mining is what my husband did. I wasn't able to work at that time, of course, because I'm running a NICU for her. And so what do? So they came in and they gave us just some little flashcards, some little books, then a DVD. They got us in contact with Utah School for the Deaf and the Blind. They gave us the videos, but it started with early intervention. They'd bring in flashcards that were like the farm animal cards that showed the signs, the food cards. After you learn all these skills, and I can only work at the time that she's at school, I was trying to figure out what I do. I started working at the special needs school, Castle Valley Center, doing occupational physical therapy as an aide, and then worked as an autism specialist for a while. Then was a preschool teacher for 6 years at Bruin Point Elementary. In all of these jobs, you could see which kids had gone through early intervention and had that help that they needed early on, and the ones who didn't. You do expect a certain dynamic of kids, because these are the ones who they can't overall go to typical school. They're the heavy hitters. They're the ones that have a lot going on. But as I'm seeing them, the ones who had early intervention, their gross motor, their fine motor skills were better. or at least we had a background on them of what had been tried and what worked, what didn't work from the early interventionists. Same thing with the communication skills. So we knew if they needed the PECS board, the augmentative communication, or if they were doing sign language at that school. Then I rotate for the preschool. There were so many of my students I was getting at age 3 and no fine motor, no verbal skills, and several of them without the gross motor skills. And so I started asking the question, because I live in a fairly small community. So out of 27 students, when I have so many of them that have these things presenting, why are you not being referred? So I started talking to our local clinics and the local pediatricians. Hey, we have a problem. Are you guys not seeing this when you do your well-child checks? There is this organization called Early Intervention that can help with that. And was hoping to get more referrals. I had to make the transition from early intervention to middle school because I need to be on Katie's schedule. So that's the answer there. And I don't know if you'll want to put this in, but when I can make about $20,000 more a year, so I can support her at the neighborhood school, than I can make for early intervention, it's a problem, because I am required to meet her needs and I can't do it on the pay scale that we were given with early intervention. So that mixed with her schedule is why I didn't have a choice. I would have loved to stay because I feel like I could be an asset to them, and I love working with this group of people. It's just my thing, but I still have responsibilities for her. So, and for finances, I have got to pay the bills. With my middle school students, I have one in particular. There's several that I have questions, but one in particular, how does he make it to 6th grade with no fine motor? And it wasn't referred preschool, it wasn't referred kindergarten, all through elementary, and he lands with me at 6th grade, and I'm like, how did this get missed? I've been back through all of his documents, never referred, never caught. Bright child has a hard time because he can't read his own handwriting, and neither can any of his teachers. So I refer him to OTPT now in 6th grade, and we know that by the time they hit 6th grade, because he didn't get the earlier interventions, now he has to be so dedicated to it to make that difference. With my experience for early intervention, my husband, he was a coal miner, and that's a pretty good paying job for our area. Now, when you're paying humongous amounts for medical care, it doesn't matter what your wage is, because no one can cop to that. I mean, we were having 20 and 30,000 out of pocket a year. Like, how do you do that? What early intervention does is they have the sliding scale. So the sliding scale made it so that we were able to afford it, because what else do you do? When you have that many medical bills coming in, I worry that if they didn't have the sliding scale, the parents would not choose to have early intervention, which is just as important as that primary care physician. It is so important that we have this for the families. The cost of care is incredible for the medical end of it, but early intervention does have ways that you can get the coverage and get those skills taught to the parents. So then the parents can run with that, tell their friends, and that's honestly, it's helped a lot of my friends, me getting the knowledge, and then when I'd see something with their kids, I could share that with them. So a lot of word of mouth happening there, and we've had a lot better outcomes with the children because of it. So it's key that we have this service. And honestly, down the pipe, it actually saves money, so much money down the pipe. But if we can intervene for them earlier, then a lot of these things can be taken care of before at a less cost is the thing.